Hello! Today we have several exciting little boxes from Rush FPV, but just before we get into that, a quick reminder to please like or dislike this video if you didn't like it. Comment down below, don't forget to subscribe, and if you can find that little bell icon, click on it just for fun because it doesn't seem to do anything. YouTube just messed stuff up. What have we got today from Rush? Actually, it's three things. It's this as well. And Rush, a big fan. Their VTXs I've been using for a long time. Their Tank VTXs. Very, very good, very clean, and their cherry antennas as well. We also looked at a little mini stack for 3-inch quads from them, which was really nice. So what have we got today? Well, there's two things. There is a 60 amp ESC board that does up to 6S, and there's an F7 flight controller, which we're going to look at in a bit more detail. Let's get them out of the box first. Go in this little box. There are some instructions. There are some stickers. There's a whole bunch of cables and standoffs, and there's the ESC itself. And this looks like no ESC I've ever used before. It looks absolutely bulletproof. It's called the Blade, and it kind of does look like that. And you see there's barely anything going on here. There is the solder pads here, and there's a bunch of writing underneath and some connectors here, and that's about it. And this thing, it feels like a little unbreakable tank thing. It feels pretty amazing. It's going to be interesting to see how it goes together. But we'll go down and close up in a moment because I'll just show you as well what's in the F7 box. So once again, instructions, sticker, like loads of cables, more cables than you can shake a stick at. And here's the flight controller. And I've got to tell you, I'm absolutely loving the design of this. What we've got here is connectors all here, nothing there, this is a cover. And on this side, again, nothing in the middle that we can see. And we've got every single connector, lovely position on the outside. Which is all labelled and you can get to easily. One of my real pet peeves with working on flight controllers is sometimes it's really difficult to get in with a soldering iron. I've had to do bits on the centre, tiny little pads that you're so scared of ruining. When everything is on the outside like this, everything gets a little bit easier. But we'll go down to close up and have a look. Now I've had to call this a first look. And that's because currently I'm sort of locked down in my house because I'm having to self-isolate before a knee operation later this month. So I can't go out and fly, but I can at least have a close look, maybe put it together or think about putting it together, and then I can come back afterwards and actually do the flight with them and see how it goes. We do have one last thing, which we'll go down into close-up and look at. But basically this is a filter. It says in the instructions that the ESC itself can't accurately filter because it's very high power in a very small space, so it's got this additional filter. So we'll have a look at that when we have a look in close-up. Let's do that now. Okay, so let's get to the close-ups. So let's start with the Blade 4-in-1 ESC board. This, as I mentioned, goes up to 6S, so it takes 3 to 6S, runs BL Heli 32. This is called the Super 60 amps. There's also a Sport, well, no, there's a Speed 60 amps and a Sport 50 amps. There's some slight differences in the spec there, where the 50 amp Sport uses 48k PWM frequency, this uses 96k PWM frequency. This has a whopping MCU running 168 megahertz, where the others are slightly slower than that. So this is a beast of a board, and it's got this little aluminium sort of case around it. It feels like a tank. This is presumably for heat dissipation. It actually labels itself as being hot right there, so best not touch it. Obviously you've got the solder pads here, we've got battery pads there, and we've got a sort of all-in-one cable which ships with this cable to connect straight to its own flight controller. And what I really liked is it also came with this one, because hey, you might be connected to something else, so you can put that in, and you can then came with these two little shells as well to decide how that would connect up, because there's no standard here, or you could of course just cut those off and solder on if you wanted to. As well as that, it comes with 2 sets of these sort of rubberized sort of standoff things. So this is the slightly higher set, and it also has this, I'd say this is more of a standard set, which just sort of sits in there and kind of soft mounts. So anyway, that's the ESC. Let's move on now to the Blade flight controller. As you see, it's F722 analog. They do one more specifically made for DJI. And what I like about this is, again, it's got a aluminium sort of case on there, so there's no real exposed electronics at all. You've got sockets for most things, so that goes back to the ESC. You've got the camera there. Over this side you've got the receiver, and you'll notice you have both an RX and a TX, which is particularly useful as there's loads of things now, like Crossfire started it using both the RX and TX for doing stuff. Other things have come along and copied the same stuff. LEDs, VTX. As I mentioned before, you've got everything, solder pads on the outside. The only inside ones you've got here, these are all jumpers. So for every other thing you connect, like you've got camera, receiver and VTX, you can flick between battery voltages. So in terms of VTX and camera, you can flick between 5 volts and battery, and on the receiver 5 volts and 3.3. I think 3.3 is still just used by Spectrum, nobody else, but hey, it's there if you need it. So on here you have 6 PWMs, there's 5 and 6 over there, 5 UARTs and 1 I2C port. You also get in the box with it so many cables, I don't know what to do. Basically there's cables for everything, and they've either got sockets straight on, and some of them come without, and just like last time they've got a couple of shells that you can put in and put your own order in, or of course you can cut stuff off and solder, and they themselves come with their little tall squishy standoffs, their regular sized ones, and these kind of squishy washers, which you might need to move it up or down, I guess. Nice colour manual for that one as well, which is great stuff. So far, this all looks fabulous. Looks absolutely simple to connect up and get going. The only spanner in the works came when I was having a quick read through the manual for the ESC, which then talks about this little power board. And this is what that other package was. This is the power filter. And this looks like this, and you get these 2 35 volt capacitors, and they would solder in like that, and then this whole thing would pop on like that. Now the only issue with this is, well, A, it's kind of like it suddenly gets a bit bigger and stuff, and B, this does sort of stick out the end a little bit more than expected. Often frames are sort of quite built round having a stack here, and they often have arms coming up, so that's maybe harder to fit in. Now Rush FPV have considered this, and they've got their own frame in the guise of the STP Star Power V2 that Unmanned Techs is selling. That's one of their sister companies. So there is that. I need to see how this will fit. Now it says if you're going to run 6S, definitely get this. I don't know if that means if you're 4S it should be clean, or it's always going to be recommended. You kind of get the impression it's better to have a filter like this than not, but I need to see if I can fit stuff in. So these two on their own, very confident about putting that in really easily, not having a problem. Being able to fit this on as well, might have to mess around a bit. Now I put the previous 20 by 20mm stack on the old Tyro 79, which didn't fly that well for me until I put the stack on it, and then it was really nice. So I was considering using the Tyro 79 here, which is well, it flies okay. It doesn't do bad, but it could be better. So I thought this would be nice, and I can include another one of the Rush FPV VTXs to go in there. Now, what I just don't know is if I've got enough space. So I'll have to think about that and see if it's going to fit or not. If it doesn't, I'll have to find something else. But stay tuned, and we'll see if this will fit, or we need to find somewhere else for it to go. Well, unfortunately, the 129's a no-go. I've just taken the VTX off just to check the size, and you can see if we sort of line over the holes there that the little extra board hits the standoffs, which is going to be a problem in quite a few models, because that's the tendency is to have these quite close. So I'm going to have to find something else for this, unfortunately. Okay, we may have a candidate in this guy. This is the Jet RC Elegant frame. I never ended up doing a review of it. This was a pre-production frame and I wasn't happy with it, and I kept talking to Jet RC and they were like, oh, just tell them that the release version will be fine, and that wasn't good enough, so I just decided not to do a review in the end because I didn't know what the final version was going to be like. This will fit on because it's a very non-traditional frame. This is upside down, and you've got these side bits that come on like that. This is having to sort of bend around this because these bulge out around the sides, unfortunately, so that's another problem.
but I don't have the riser issue. Another issue I got is all the motor wires are too short, so I'd have to get extensions, and this is only 4S, not 6S, and I wanted to test it on 6S, but you know, I think we're going to have to do the best we've got. Obviously, I've already soldered this in place, so I could see how that would work. So I'm going to go ahead and, I think, solder on the extensions for these, join them up, get the other board on. I'm not going to be able to fit a regular VTX on, so I'm going to have to put something mini out the back there. Yeah, it's a bit of a mess really because of this board. It's a bit of a pain. Okay, sometime later, and we're talking several hours. I've redone the wires to the ESC board, which is under there. All the joins are hidden under this stuff. I've had to put this F7 board on upside down, and that's because there's a gap there where the USB connector will go, and if it's ran the other way, I can't get to it. So that lead is twisted around, connecting the ESC and the camera. On the actual board itself, I've pretty much done all solder connections instead of using connectors. Really nice things to work with. You can see I've done the shorts to put everything on 5 volts. Normally I'd have the VTX on battery, but because I've got no room here, as I said, I'm on the little Rush Tiny, which needs to work off 5 volts, I think. Camera's in. I've got the original LED board soldered in there. I've bound the receiver, so that's okay. Basically, I've got to stuff the VTX and receiver down there somehow tidily because I've got no space there. You can also see if we can do this. You can see it's kind of, that thin carbon's bowing out because of these things are pushing it outwards. So it's not perfect by any means. But yeah, let's get it all together and set it up, and then we can go into Betaflight and see what we need to do. As I said, I did bind it, and I checked I had a picture coming through, so that was okay. I've got to do something about this. I put a little UFL cherry on that, but either I need to sort of find a way of having that sticking out, or maybe just pull that through. This was kind of designed to hold a stubby, but obviously a different size, so I might do something to basically hold it in like that. We'll see before we put the top on. Lots of work still. Didn't really go together very well. Kind of mushed together in a bad way. It's all the fault of this board, basically, making my life difficult.
So let's connect into that quad now and see what's set up by default on the flight controller. And as you can see, there's not an awful lot set up. We are running 424 and it's got its own Rush Blade F7 target, but as it said there's a whole bunch of things not done. And when I actually attached this the first time, the accelerometer wasn't calibrated either. I did do that and then thought, oh, I should connect into this to show people what's going on. So ports wise, it's kind of set up as it expects to be done. So you've got serial RX on UART2, you've got smart audio on UART4. These are kind of the UARTs right next to the receiver and the VTX. ESC sensor input, UART3. And then in configuration, you'll see we've got no ESC or motor protocol. Everything is pretty much not set up at all. Power and battery aren't going to do much. PID tuning going to be absolute defaults, I guess. Receiver, of course, there's nothing there. Modes, absolutely no modes set up. Motor output's obviously not got anything happening. And the OSD, yeah, it's pretty much what I thought, because I did plug a battery in just to make sure that was working, and that's what we saw. We in fact saw voltage, the battery is not full or something on the top there. VTX, nothing there, so we'll have to do that as well. And I've got an LED strip on this one, but it's just got one LED there, and I've got 6. So yeah, there's a fair old amount to set up here. Of course, the other thing I don't know as well is which way the motors are going to run, so I probably need to go into BL-Heli-32 to set that up, but we'll do that all, and then we'll have a quick look back at what we've done. So let's have a quick look now at what we did do, just a brief one. Didn't touch the ports, they looked okay. Config wise, I set up D-Shot 600 motor stop, and I added bidirectional D-Shot because these are using BL-Heli-32 firmware. I also changed this to S-Bus because it's set to default to Spectrum, and then it's much the same as normal. Air mode was set to on. I took it off, did all my normal stuff there. PID tuning, I didn't touch the PID tuning. The only thing I did was go into rates and set up my normal rates there. Receiver wise, I've got a little XM Plus, so I've got my RSI channel on aux 12, so I did the little bits of sub trim and stuff. Mode, set up my normal modes, nothing much to say there. I come to OSD next. I'll come back to motors in a sec, I'll tell you why. OSD, I set it up as all my normal stuff there. Video transmitter, I set up, this is based on Smart Audio version 2. If you go to this page, you will basically see where you can copy and paste in the start of this if you haven't done it before. I've just vaguely changed it because I'm using the tiny tank, which has slightly different power levels. LED strip, I just added my other LEDs and just made them all red basically. That seems okay. Now motors. When I was testing my motors out, I found out that the motors were wrong. 1, 2, 3, 4 it was how it was happening to me. And this is because, of course, I forgot to realise that I was working upside down when I was installing the ESC. So I complained like I had to put the FC in upside down. Really, the FC is round the right way and the ESC board is upside down, but you can't put the ESC board in the other way because then it would be almost impossible to work on. So what I need to do is go into CLI and quickly swap the motors around. So I don't want to go through this in great detail because this video isn't about this, so shout if you really want this. But essentially, all you need to do is find your resources and then you look at where the motor's set to in terms of the hex number and then decide where you want to put it. At this point, you can use the resource command to shift the motors around. So you see I'm moving motor 1 to B01 and then I'm moving motor 2 to B00, etc, etc, and basically you end up redefining where all the motor positions are, which then looks like this. And then if we compare this new resource listing with the old one, it's very easy to see how we've basically shifted the motors around to different physical positions essentially. Now after I checked that out, I just had one motor reverse, so I quickly went into BR32 and reversed it, and everything seemed good, so ready for a test.
Okay, well I found these weird and interesting looking props, so we're going to do just really a garden hover because that's about all I can do actually.
Now at that point my GoPro battery ran out, which I wasn't aware of at the time, so I actually did a flight and then found out I'd only recorded that much, so came back and did another one. The reason I mention this is I did a DVR recording of the first flight which will bear absolutely no resemblance to what's going on here, and I'll show that here. And I just wanted to see if I was getting any interference and basically seeing if the footage looked smooth. Certainly from the point of view of hovering, it did feel very smooth, felt very responsive. No little sort of niggles or little glitches or sort of any flickers in the controls there, so that was really nice. Of course you can't really tell an awful lot just from a hover like this. You really need to sort of push the throttle and have to sort of put it into dives and more extreme manoeuvres really than just hovering around. But so far so good in terms of what it's doing. So yeah, that's about the extent of my amazing flight testing for this one at least. So that's it until I can get out into a proper field and fly this thing properly. Well, there's the finished article by the way, and yeah, it's all looking fairly neat. I mean, it's quite nice low profile and stuff, although you can see it bulging out. And really we have to wait till part 2 before we can really get into the guts of how things are working. But one conclusion I can draw is that little power board for the ESC absolutely makes life really difficult. I'm not sure why it has to be that big and have 2 capacitors coming out of it. I mean, it's quite common. Here's a Nazgul 5. You will see just at the back there, sticking out of the main ESC board, is a single capacitor which is coming straight out the back, which goes in between the posts, and that works quite well. And every other single frame I've seen have done that. When you've got 2 poking straight upwards, you need a special sort of frame to use it, and it seems a bit weird saying, okay, well we've got this frame, use that one, where people would want to use that board in the frames they already have, really. So there's that's a problem. As far as the flight controller goes, that was really quite a joy to work with. Everything laid out nicely along the outside. Soldering's really easy to it. Nice and easy to set the jumpers. Really like that. The ESC design looks really nice. It's just the filter for it really bad. It made it really restricted on frame choice. But let's see what happens in part 2 after I've had my little hospital surgery and that, and I'm allowed out. Probably in the new year by the looks of it now. But got to say big thanks to Rush FPV for getting me the 2 boards to take a look at, and of course there'll be links down below if you want to check them out in more detail. Come back, join us, and we'll see how this flies and how the rest of the system stacks up. Anyway, I hope that part 1's been helpful, and I'll see you in part 2. Bye for now. Well, you've made it to the end of the video, so thanks once again for watching. If you like what you saw, then please consider subscribing, and if you really like what you saw, then be sure to check out the link to my blog for a variety of ways in which you can help support this channel.